All right. Looks like we have started recording. There we go. Now, in this morning's class, there was an issue because somebody had said something about the 10 references for the annotated bibliography. I assure you there are only 8, and we will talk about that more in just a little bit. One thing I wanted to mention is, oh, by the way, the first code word is orangutan. In Indonesia, there is actually a 4-foot version of Bigfoot that the locals refer to as orang pendek. And this is like a Bigfoot, if you can imagine, with huge feet, and he's only 4 foot tall. And one of the people from National Geographic that is supposed to be tracking the tiger that's there said that there have been fewer sightings of the Bengal tiger that they know is in Indonesia than there have been of the orang pendek, who's supposed to be Bigfoot's smaller cousin. I just thought that was interesting. Of course, it will not be on any test, or will it? One of the things that is really important, UVU just released something that said that this last week what can I say? The weekly number of new cases of COVID transmission has been dropping at UVU. And does anybody know again how many student-to-student transmissions there have been in the visual arts in the 3D design department? Anybody know?
I do not.
Isn't it 0?
It's 0 still. So yeah, that's it. Excellent news. And I think if we continue being respectful of each other's spaces and just you guys keep acting professionally, that trend is going to continue. I think it's remarkable. However, there are only 18 people in our section in the evening. What that means, only 9 meet on Tuesday and 9 meet on Thursday. What I'm leading to is in that room we can only have a maximum or a minimum of 6 feet of separation between each person. What that means is if you have to miss like on a Tuesday or a Thursday and you know ahead of time, just let me know and you can go to the other section. We have one person that missed a couple times and that's what they're doing. And it's perfectly fine. So it'll give you an opportunity to get your work done. And that is, if you do that, you can tell me that you've come to class and you don't need to do the attendance makeup for that class that you missed. All right? Does that make sense? So basically you're coming on a different night and there will be room. If, however, like 3 people decide to all do that at once, then we will have to have you sit in the hall or somewhere else. You know, the little kids table at Thanksgiving. But we'll do our best to accommodate everybody. Now, let me do roll really fast to see whoever's here. I see Michael, you're here. And Evan, you're here. See that?
I'm here.
Excellent. On your cell phone, there's supposed to be limited accessibility to the Teams format stuff. I don't know what that means. I'm not having you guys do screen sharing and stuff like that. If you wouldn't mind letting me know just in an email afterwards if it is more difficult or less difficult for you to get on with the cell phone on Teams, I'd appreciate that. Because it might be that, you know, if everybody wants to go out and take a picnic lunch sometime, that'd be just fine to do. As long as nobody.
Yeah, it's pretty easy, so it's been fun so far.
All right, good. All right, is Alyssa here? All right. Is Delane? I saw you. You're here. James.
Yes,
I'm sorry, what was that, Blaine?
Sorry, I thought you called for me. I'm here.
Yeah, I saw you were here, so I called, but then I changed my mind. James, are you here? Sage, are you here? This is the, yeah, I see you. You're right there. Okay. Yep. Hazel, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Now, you, I think, are still getting both the research and the service learning assignments. So if you want to choose one or the other, just let me know as soon as you have. How about Hayden? Are you here?
I'm here.
All right, excellent. Emily?
I'm here.
Excellent. Emery? How about Brinley? Is Cassidy here? How about Kayana? Taylor, are you here? Sage, number 2, Sage Sagers, are you here? Karen?
Here.
Excellent. Keely? And Hillary, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Excellent. Okay. Okay. As a hybrid class, we have to meet physically once a week. And we split up to maintain that 6 foot of social distancing. But again, if you need to go attend a different day than you're normally signed up for, just let me know ahead of time and we will make accommodations for you. I want to make sure that everybody stays safe and healthy. Have you guys been taking advantage of the on-campus testing? Because in the ballroom, you can go and get tested once a week if you'd like. I would recommend everybody get tested at least every month. And go on, I would also recommend highly, don't listen to me, go on to the university website and see what they recommend. It's always smarter to follow their recommendations. Okay, regarding the annotated bibliography, how many sources do you need to reference?
Isn't it 8?
It is 8. That is right. I've had a lot of people asking questions about scholarly, peer-reviewed, etc. We're dealing with artists, and the type of articles, the type of references that we're looking for is, for example, you can find some really good stuff on Ai Weiwei if he's your artist on YouTube. And it would be totally cool to watch like a 14-minute video of Ai Weiwei talking about how he's helping Greek immigrants or immigrants into Greece and using his stature as an artist internationally to help out the people that are really need it. And then do short 2 paragraphs about why that particular YouTube video is so worthwhile. You know, what kind of new information it gave you. That's totally fine. I don't really expect any of these beyond maybe one, if that, to be biographical. They don't need to be. What you're doing is basically building up a reference that you can use in the future or somebody else can use to get a pretty good and well-rounded view of what motivates this artist, what kind of work that they do, how expansive the body of work is, kind of hallmarks or symbols that they use, that sort of thing. And writing one really good paragraph of 5 sentences or 2 paragraphs of each of 3 to 5 sentences for each source is excellent. And there are also references on that module that will take you to sites where you will know how to properly reference a YouTube video, for example, or an online article. Another thing to be mindful of is Wikipedia. Who can write, who is qualified to write for Wikipedia?
I am.
Yeah. Why? What qualifies you?
I have internet access.
Exactly.
The question is whether it will stay, because Wikipedia is actually getting really good at rooting out false information. So the idea that Wikipedia is not a good source is kind of outdated because they're really good at actual fact checking at this point. Just my 2 cents.
That's good, because as of last year, they just did not have the funds to do fact checking. What I was going to say about Wikipedia is, if you want to use that as an article source, I would be careful. But the best thing about Wikipedia is at the bottom of the article, they have all those sources and references, and those are excellent. So if I was doing an annotated bibliography, my first thing to do would be go to Wikipedia, look up the artist, and then go down and start researching each of the reference articles. And if in that, you do your own fact checking and it looks like a legitimate article, use the Wikipedia source as well. Now, we did talk about author bias. Can you use articles, or can you avoid using articles that have any sort of bias by the author? Is there any way to avoid that? I honestly do not believe that there is. But as a researcher, it would be a really good idea to check the author's bias and just take that into account when you research the article. For the most part, that doesn't play a lot with these authors or with these artists, unless the article you find is telling you that the artist is just a child of Satan and completely useless as a human being, and the only good they could ever do for society is to donate their skin to burn victims. Then I would say the author bias has contributed somehow negatively to the article. But just do be aware of your sources. Some of the sources to look at would be some of the arts magazines, online art sources like ArtNet is really good. Christie's is really good. Another thing to do is look for articles that deal with retrospectives or critiques of current shows or critiques of individual artworks. There are sometimes you can find students in classes like this that will write articles about artists, and those are really good too. But at the end, I want you to have 8 sources that will be good for other people to find out about what the artist has produced, kind of their worldview, or even yourself later on when you get super duper bored and start looking through your portfolio of work as a young college person. The next thing I wanted to do was talk about, does anybody have any questions about the annotation? Or on the other side of that, does anybody have any questions about your work that you're doing as a service learning person? Who's having issues with that? Or who is having success with that? Who's here that is doing the service learning portion?
I am
I
doing
am.
Okay. Sorry, who are the 2 people that spoke up, or who are the people that spoke up?
It's Hillary.
And Elaine.
Okay, and Elaine. Okay, excellent. Are you guys having any issues doing those things on the service learning module? I think one of the issues that is really problematic is that people have a tendency not to respond when you reach out to them.
So far I haven't come across any issues.
Okay. All right, good. And how about you, Hillary?
I haven't had any issues. I'm a bit of a slow start though, so catching up with other stuff. So.
Okay, yeah, you have some stuff to do. That's no problem at all. one thing that well, actually a couple of things to point out for that with the service learning is, and for the annotated bibliography. I know it says that it's due on Sunday, but I'm really thinking that if you guys need some more time, that's totally fine. You know how I feel about setting the due dates in stone. So I'm thinking, if this gets done over the next 2 weeks, that'll be perfectly fine. I would just do the best you can, get as much of it out of the way before spring break as you can, and finish it up after. All right? But I'm really glad to hear that you guys are not having that big of a tremendous issue with that. I'm going to do screen share and switch over to annotated bibliography right now. Well, I'm going to attempt that. Hold on. Here we go. Can everybody see this?
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
This is the intro to tools of artistic critique. I'm going to change it over to the page really quick here. Let's see. All right, here we go. I would like people to take turns, 4 different people to take turns about just, I would like one person to tackle each of the 4 steps of the tools of artistic critique. First, description. What separates description from any of the other steps, any of the other 3 steps? What are you doing in the description portion of tools of artistic critique that you will not be doing necessarily, even though you're referring to it, in the other 3 steps?
You're just describing the thing, just the facts, ma'am, kind of a thing.
Yes, exactly. All you're doing, and when the reason why I'm doing this is that in the next couple months, what we're going to be doing is the 3rd step of the tools of artistic critique module, which is every person is going to be critiquing one sample of their own 3-dimensional art made during this semester and one sample of 3-dimensional art made by somebody else in the class during this semester. Some of you are going to be doing that in class. Some of it, we're going to be showing a picture on Teams, and you're going to be just verbalizing that application of the tools. And this first step is really important because you're describing it, trying to leave as much of yourself out of it as possible. So just exactly, just the facts, ma'am, that's absolutely right. How tall is this? What color is it? What textures are there? Is it realistic? Is it abstract? Is it non-objective? What things do you see? How does the light play on it? All those things. Does it feel heavy? Does it feel light? Those are the kinds of things that we deal with specifically with just the description. How does this object interact with our presence in the physical universe, essentially? Second, this is a little bit trickier. Analysis. Would somebody just care to describe the analysis aspect of the tools of artistic critique?
I feel like analysis is kind of just like describing, but more in depth with more details and stuff, and sort of inferring different things instead of just looking at it sort of at face value.
I think that's a really good way. You covered the physical aspects of it, and now you're kind of talking about how these elements came to be, almost. How are they related to each other?
Yeah.
And I think you're right. It's a little bit more in depth than just the description. And I like that perspective on it because you're injecting a little bit of yourself into it, because you're injecting your own cognitive process into kind of an elaboration of the description, but that you're trying to still maintain a separation between yourself and the artist. But yeah, that's good. Thank you. That's very good. Now, interpretation, we're injecting a little bit of ourselves into it. I would like one person to talk about how is interpretation different than analysis, and what are you adding to the analysis to get the interpretation?
I think with interpretation, you kind of take into account other things like context, whether it's like a political context or the social context, as well as the materials used, and getting a better sense of why the piece was made and what the purpose of it is.
I like that. And that, I think that that's really good. The interpretation, you're putting more of yourself into that because you're making a number of assumptions from the analysis that you've already done. And I think that that's a really good way of putting that to explaining that. Could I hear from somebody else? What makes the interpretation different, so different from the analysis? Or are the two related?
I think with interpretation, it's more how does it relate to your personal experiences and how it relates to you? What's your interpretation of it?
All right. Yeah, I think so. And so like when the earlier speaker was talking about why was the piece made, the interpretation, unless you have access to that artist's brain, you have to decide why the piece was made. And I think you're absolutely right. Very good. Now, the last one, judgment. What qualifies us to make a judgment on a work of art? You know, we've been told from a young age that it's improper to judge, and we've been trained to feel that prejudging is wrong. How come all of a sudden we're being asked to judge something or evaluate something? What makes it different?
I think that a big difference is that it's not coming from a place of like skepticism, I guess, but more of trying to understand what the artist has like put down in whatever medium.
I think that's a really good perspective. I think that's excellent because we are trying to understand. We're trying to, ultimately, we're using these tools to try to appreciate what somebody else has made or to try to appreciate another level of what we've made ourselves. And I think that's really good. And the judgment is not intended for us to say, this sucks eternally, or this defines beauty for everyone in the universe. The judgment is this successful as a work of art? How could we have made it better ourselves? Or how could the other person made it better? Or how is it, alternately, and I think more importantly, is how is it successful? What kind of amazing things did we put in our artwork that made it so successful? Or what kind of amazing things did our classmate do to make this particular piece of art successful? And I think that what qualifies us to judge is that we are professional artists. You know, this is the kind of thing that we do. We have the training. We have the awareness of the principles of artistic construction. What makes things valid or workable or successful as a work of art? We know this kind of stuff. And so we're not telling somebody that their life's work sucks. What we are doing is saying, well, these are elements that are successful that I can learn from. These are things that I think that I can do better in future work myself. So that's where that judgment fits in. When you do your own critique of either your work or somebody else's work, I would like you to take a moment beforehand to go over this and address one or two of those questions for each of those 4 points as you go through and do the critique. And we also have vocabulary words. I think that vocabulary is really important. We hear a lot about things like emotional quotient or emotional intelligence. One of the aspects as to why that's important is when we have a broader array of vocabulary words to use when expressing emotion, we can be more precise and healthy in expression of emotion. And the similar thing applies to description of art. When we can be more precise with the words that we use, not only does it help us clarify our own thinking, but it's more helpful to people to appreciate where we're coming from when we're describing or critiquing a work of art. We can talk about shape, but when we deal with shape, we also can deal with things like form and mass in that shape. When we talk about color, we have a vast array of different kinds of color that we can use, but we can also talk about color palettes, and we can talk about warmth or coolness within a color palette. So before you go into your critiquing, and we're going to do this some next week, and I think I did ask for some volunteers for this week as well, but I did not follow up, so I'm not going to hold anybody to that at all. But do take a moment to go through this, pull it up on your phone, but when you go and do your critique, so you have a reference point to follow, or you have reference points to follow as you're doing the critique. And I think that we'll start that on Tuesday. We'll do it again on Thursday in class, and then on Friday, we will have time for a couple critiques. Again, I keep saying next week. I don't mean next week. I mean the week after spring break, just to be clear. I do not expect anybody to do this next week, because you'll all be doing much more important stuff like de-stressing and preparing for the rest of the term. But does anybody have any questions about tools of artistic critique as we've talked about them? When I ask questions, the level of response that I'm getting from you, from everybody, shows me that you really are prepared, that you really do understand what we're talking about when we're discussing this. So I'm going to go ahead and go on unless somebody has any questions directly to that. I'm just really pleased because I have done classes before where we get to this point in the semester and still nobody's bothered to read that one page. And I'm just really happy that you guys actually show a level of care. So that makes me happy. The next thing I want to talk about is just discussing a little bit of the structure with skin. As we kind of addressed that a little bit this last week, and we started it a bit. I want to hear from people what you guys are considering using or what you are using in your own little modules that you're making. What do you think is the weirdest thing that you've decided to use, or the most mundane? Sage, have you gotten to that point where you're going to I'm sorry, let me start over again. Sage, have you gotten to the point where you are pulling out your materials to start make the structures for your units, for your blocks?
I played around with the sticks that you gave us in class, but I've mainly just been sticking to my my sketchbook right now and trying to figure out exactly what I want to do.
Okay. Do you have any leanings one way or another as to what, and how successful were the sticks for you?
They're going pretty good. I think I want to use something else for my actual sculpture. So I'm thinking of getting maybe popsicle sticks instead, because I think that would give me the look that I want more. But it's been going good. I've been like messing up a lot, but learning a lot at the same time.
All right, that's good. I think popsicle sticks is a good thing to start with. There are some problematic issues with that, and that is primarily because they are uh, so much wider in one direction. And I've seen, I can't remember what they're called. They maybe as something as mundane and poorly thought out as craft sticks, but they're sticks that are about 6 inches long, about a quarter inch wide, and maybe about 3/32 thick. But those seem to work really well too, and they function a lot like popsicle sticks, but they seem to be a little bit more versatile. So it really depends on what direction you want to go, but I think those are good too. Anybody else that come up with some creative solutions for adhering their structures together? There was one thing that I forgot to write on the board last night that I remembered. When I was a kid, I would stick up posters everywhere. I loved Scholastic Book Club, and I would always get posters from them. And one thing that we used to stick them up on the walls of my bedroom was paste toothpaste. And I'm not talking about AIM is like totally clear, that does not work at all. But if you get like Crest paste toothpaste, a little pea-sized dollop of that, you have to hold it in place until it dries, but once it dries, it ain't going anywhere. And I have actually pulled off drywall because of not being very careful removing the toothpaste. The way to remove it is just by soaking it with water, and then it wipes up really well. But it is almost as good as concrete when you adhere stuff and let it dry. So something to think about. And the fact that we use that in our mouths several times a day is just awesome. No judgment is made, no judgment is observed, and no judgment is acknowledged on the use of toothpaste in the mouth multiple times a day. I just think it's an interesting observation.
I guess that's why they tell you not to swallow it.
Yeah, do not swallow the toothpaste, yes. Has anybody given any other thought to the type of skin you want to use? Anybody thought of other things? One thing that I was looking at is sometimes you can find really cheap templates out of really thin plastic at like craft stores or Dollar Tree. And some of those templates, they'll use them for things like periodic table of the elements, and you can put them in your notebook, all the way to, I've seen them as for like engineering. I have this kind of a thing. Oh, can you see that? Yeah, when it's over my, yeah. Templates like this. This one was a really nice one, but you can get super cheap ones for a couple bucks for $1, and that would make a very interesting, different way of applying a skin. So there's other different things. One thing that my kids did, which I thought was really kind of gross, but ended up being kind of cool, is one of them would tape down saran wrap so that it's flat on a table surface. And then they would put dye in Elmer's glue and smear the glue around over that. And it makes a transparent, semi-flexible, mostly rigid skin that you could actually cut with scissors. And you can put whatever kind of design you want in that with food dye, food coloring, or you can even put like clear glue down and then use colorized glue and do images or textures in that. And then when it dries, just cut it out like you would with scissors, peel it off the saran wrap and use that. You guys can also use combinations of any of the things that we talk about. I would just like you to be creative enough that this becomes less burdensome and more entertaining for you. So over the next week during spring break, in the back of your head, just think about that. Think about the different kinds of things that you can do. I also wanted to reiterate building access. The building will be open Monday through Thursday next week, 7:30 in the morning until 8 p.m. at night. Do consider, though, that there is going to be limited personnel on site. So please be patient, be mindful. They might not open the doors right at 7:30. It might be a little bit later. and they might not be through right at 8. It might be a little bit earlier that they come through to start kicking people out because they have to lock up. So just be mindful of that and be patient with people. Not everybody's schedules are going to be aligned with exactly where we want to be at the same time. And also, I've been told that because of limited personnel on site, they will most likely not unlock the 5th level exterior doors. So you will have to most likely come in through the 6th floor, take the elevator down, or take the stairs down to the 5th floor. Just be mindful of that. It's also really important anytime you go on campus, remember to have your mask with you. And if anybody else is anywhere around, make sure that you're wearing your masks and that they see you wearing your mask. And again, when you clean up, document that you've cleaned up. I doubt we'll ever have to use that, but it's really nice that you have that on your phone just in case anybody gives you any crap. Does anybody think that they will actually make use of the building next week? I know that a couple, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going.
Because a couple of people are still going to be fiddling with their sculptures and stuff, and that's great. Work on it when you can. We are going to be revisiting it after we do structure with skin and cardboard. So you will have a chance to finish it up or do other things. One thing I wanted to do is take a break. Working with a material that feels like you're grinding on teeth all day can be a little trying. And sometimes a lot of people have said when we've gone back to it after working on these other things in the meantime, it's given them new insight. So it's something to consider. Any last question? Oh, let me see. Tiger is the second code word. Notice there's a theme. Who has questions for me so far about the semester, for the annotated bibliography, for the service learning stuff? And has anybody come in after I did roll at the beginning? Anybody further come in or join us? I'll take that silence to mean no. Does anybody have any further questions for me at this time?
A couple weeks ago when I think it was the second time that the evening class had to watch the recording of the morning class, I wrote down the code words, but I don't think I ever emailed them to you. I noticed them in my notebook and I was like, oh, I don't think I did that. Can I email those to you and still get the attendance for that?
I'm going to tell you guys a secret. Absolutely, go for it. I don't really care. As long as you guys are watching the videos, that's awesome. And I ask people to do it, if you can do it by the Sunday night of the week, the video came out, that's great. I'd prefer that. But the reality is if you get your time in, that's what counts. So yeah, go ahead, email, that'll be great. I'll go back and change it.
Thanks.
This reminds me of something else, and I'm glad you said something. I got almost all caught up with grades. More people turn stuff in. I'm going to try to get caught up again completely by tomorrow night, if I can, or Sunday night, so everybody will know where they're at. Sometimes in assignments that are more than 2 weeks overdue, the overdue is that's not really material. I will put a 0 in, but that's mostly to remind you that that's an assignment that needs to get done. Who remembers what I said a month and a half ago about when everything is due? Does anybody remember?
It's the last minute of the last day of the semester, something like that.
Yes, of the last final, exactly. Yes, very good. We put the due dates in I put the due dates in so you guys can spread out the assignments and get stuff done over the semester. Who of you have taken ethics? I think at least 3 of you are taking the ethics class. Anybody in this call right today? Okay, because you guys, I know that several of you are taking other classes where you have massive stuff due at the end of the term, and I want you to space stuff out so you don't have to crowd everything in at the last moment. And that's what the due dates are for. And you guys are professionals. You're pretty good at governing yourselves. But I'll put the zeros in on the assignments and stuff like that, just so you know, oh, I forgot to do that. I've got to get it taken care of. So yeah, like Michael was saying, if you come in and didn't turn in the code words earlier, come back at any point, email me, and then also go to your attendance on your Canvas page and make sure that I'm giving you credit for everything that you're doing. Okay, and keep track. Make sure that I'm giving you the points that you deserve for the stuff that you're doing. Okay. The third code word is Talofa. It's like Tongan for aloha. So that's the last code word, which brings us pretty close to the end of the day. I'm sorry, we're probably not going to go the full 50 minutes, just because we've covered everything already. I planned on a little bit more time for questions, and I'm glad that you guys know everything. That makes my jobs a lot easier. The rest of the term, I see that we're going to be finishing up Structure with Skin the week after spring break. Then I see the last 2 weeks, or the next 2 weeks, we're going to be working on with our cardboard structures. That's the next module. In between that, we will also be doing the next stage of the research project, getting that started, as well as the next stage, or starting the projects for the service learning personnel. And then we're going to stagger a little bit. The research is going to be spread out a little bit more, and the service learning, their stuff is going to be clumped in pretty much at the end of the term. And after that big speech about I don't want everybody to stress out because everything's due all at once, just the service learning, the project takes a little bit more real world calendar days, I think, than the PowerPoint will, just because you have to interact and coordinate with actually different groups of people. And as we go to the PowerPoint part of the research project, what you guys will be doing is signing up for a presentation time, and then we'll start doing those on our Friday meetings. You'll be doing the PowerPoint presentations during our meetings for the last 3 or 4 weeks of the term. All right, so that's kind of an overview about what the next couple months are going to look like. I say couple months, it's more like a month and a half, 7 weeks, something like that. Time is becoming more and more fluid the older I get. I'm sure that you guys will experience that sometime in the coming decades. But I really appreciate working with you. And if there's no further questions, I'm going to tell you guys have an awesome spring break, de-stress, work whatever kinks out you need to, and we'll finish up the Structure of Skin the week you get back. All right? Any last questions? I'll take just the aching silence as a big no. So I will see you guys in a week and a half. All righty?
Awesome. Thank you. Have a good spring break too.
All right, we'll see you. I'm going to end the recording now.
Thank you.